Hello viewers, and welcome yet again to another episode of Dinner Guide. I am your host Chef Andy, and today we're going to be making something somewhat simple but also complex. We're going to be doing some chili beef, and I'm also going to be doing some broccoli. But before we get that far, I'll begin by introducing the ingredients before us, just to give you a breakdown of what to expect. So from the very front, I've got a teaspoon of paprika powder, a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and a teaspoon of dried parsley. I've also got some teriyaki and some dark soy sauce and some cumin powder. You'll also require 200 grams of beef fillet that's been cut into strips, and one whole lemon, one large flower of broccoli, some salt for seasoning, some cherry tomatoes, some fresh coriander leaves, and some oil to cook with. You'll also require some black peppercorns to crush, about a cup of chicken stock, and last but not least, some water. So we're going to take a break now, allowing you to grab your pens and papers if you're taking notes, and we'll catch you after a very short break. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just catching up with us, we're about to start this very simple dish with the beef and broccoli. And now, to begin with, we'll begin by deflouring the broccoli. So very simply, proceed to grab a big bowl, and using a sharp knife, proceed to core out those broccoli florets. Of course, always making sure to try and trim farthest from the stem, closest to the flower. And just proceed to go around your head of broccoli. And of course, making sure not to incorporate any of the leaves or the stem. And if you really don't have a clue of what to do with the remainder of your broccoli, you remember you could always throw this into some water, mix it up with some trimmings from vegetables, and this will make very good stock. So we're just going to proceed to break this up into smaller sizes. And remember, you can also alternate broccoli for cauliflower if you're looking for a different color and a different presentation. But for the fact that broccoli does go very well, especially with some of these Asian fused ingredients, it will actually give a very beautiful taste. So in a pot that's already boiling, we're going to proceed to season with some salt. And now, to the same quantity of water, to half the quantity of water, we'll infuse some chicken stock to that. Remember, chicken stock always brings a nice, beautiful combination of flavor. It also is a little more nutritious than just steaming with water, so this will actually enrich your broccoli quite a little bit. And now, to your boiling pot, proceed to add your broccoli flowers. Press them down with a ladle or a spoon, making sure they are completely submerged, and allow those to steam for anywhere between 5 to 6 minutes. Very important to mention as well, you may also want to have a strainer ready to actually just cool off your broccoli very quickly. So that's going to come out of the water. We'll pour it into this beautiful dish and allow it to cool off very quickly under some running water. But before we get there, we'll proceed to also begin on the beef. And that is a very simple process. Begin by heating your pan. And to that, proceed to add a tablespoon of some oil. Now, if I can be able to show you the sizes of the beef, as you can see, those are almost finger length in size. They're also very thin, so you should actually be able to do this very easily yourselves. But if not, you can actually also mention that to your butcher. Mention to them that you are going to be looking for some strips of beef, and they will be able to cut them to a particular size that you may like, or even a particular size that you can be able to refer to when doing it on your own. So we're going to begin the process very simply by just moving our pan around, allowing the oil to touch the whole base of your pan, and using a pair of tongs, we're going to proceed to add those to our pan, making sure, of course, to spread them out, allowing for an even cooking. And very important to also make sure is always use a pan big enough to accommodate your mixture, and a pan that will allow for all of your meat to touch the base of the pan. And also be sure also not to incorporate any of the blood left in your bowl. So you can easily achieve this by just shaking the last bits of beef strips in your bowl. Just knock them on the sides of your bowl. That will allow for you to drain that excess blood. Right, now we're just going to allow our beef to start to color. And remember, this being a very thin cut of beef, and as well being a very prime cut from filet, that should actually brown anywhere between 4 to 6 minutes. Now we're just going to tilt the pan, allowing the oil to pour to one side of the pan, and that will also allow for you to really just extinguish any excess fat that may be on your meat, and you can proceed to toss that very gently. Proceed to spread your pieces out on the pan once more, and allow for the full cooking. And now we're also going to be incorporating some ingredients to that. As I mentioned, teriyaki sauce and some dark soy sauce. You'll also require some paprika powder, some cayenne pepper, some cumin powder, and last but not least, some dried parsley. So begin by adding a small pinch of paprika. Remember, this will actually form quite a bit of a difference. It will also help to tenderize and break down the tendons in the meat. Proceed to add about half of your dried parsley. Add your cumin powder and half of your cayenne pepper. Now proceed to toss that once more, of course cooking at very high heat. And now we're just going to proceed to deglaze the pan by using some teriyaki sauce and some dark soy sauce. Proceed to toast those in your pan, and you'll be able to see that nice beautiful dark color as soon as your dark soy sauce hits the strips of beef. Right, so our beef is now on the go, but remember we are going to be infusing some ingredients to this as well. So I will begin by turning off the heat on the broccoli completely and proceed to move this to your sink. Of course, beginning by dropping your sieve into the water, into the sink, and allowing some cold water to run through, and proceed to pour out your broccoli. Of course, giving it a shake and turning it a few times to enable you to cool them off a little faster. And once that is done, you can allow that to drain very briefly by giving it a shake. And you can reserve that on the side very briefly. Now your meat should actually be almost cooked to medium by this stage. To that, we'll proceed to add our cherry tomatoes and a small pinch of salt. So add in some black peppercorns and proceed to toss together once more. Now what you're going to do is the cherry tomatoes are actually going to allow you to time the meat. So right up until the point where your tomatoes begin to blister. And by blistering would basically mean the heat has just hit the skin of the tomato and it's just actually starting to break. Right, so tomatoes are now blistered. I'm just going to grab a separate plate and proceed to just pour that into the plate and allow that to cool very, very briefly. You can discard your pan and proceed to grab a bigger pan. Allow that a few seconds to come to the heat. Of course, being very vigilant by adding very, very little oil. Remember, your meat is already cooked. There's quite a bit of oil still in that mixture, so you don't want to actually add too much oil at this stage. So we're just going to allow the pan to come to the heat. And one particular good sign to be able to bear in mind, especially when you're just about ready to flash fry some vegetables that you've been blanching, you're basically going to allow your pan to come to a very, very hot stage, basically allowing it to almost smoke from the top. And that should actually also allow for your oil to completely cook all that content down. And once your pan is a little hot, proceed to grab your broccoli and add to your pan. Of course, giving it just a few seconds to come to the heat. And just proceed to toss that in the pan. So basically this will allow for you to get a nice, beautiful, even color to your broccoli. Also allows for you to season at this stage. So proceed to add the rest of your parsley, your paprika powder, and your cayenne pepper. Toss that in the pan. And just right up until the point where your paprika has completely coated your broccoli, we're going to proceed to infuse in the beef. And all you're going to do at this stage is just proceed to toss that just right up until that beautiful soy coating has just touched every single bit and piece of your broccoli. And just last but not least, proceed to chop in some fresh coriander leaves. Add those to your pan. You can also correct your seasoning at this stage by adding some salt and some black peppercorns. And of course, very handy, especially for anything in relation to stir fry. Remember, acid has a way of really bringing ingredients together and flavors as well. So we're only going to use about half a lemon for this. Now proceed to squeeze that through your sieve. That should allow for you to trap any of the seeds from your lemon. And you can proceed to discard the rest. And proceed to toss once more, turning off the heat completely at this stage and allowing the ingredients to just fuse with that little bit of heat from your pan. But before we proceed to plating, and for me to give you a bit of other breakdown and a bit of alterations and also substitutes to the ingredients, we are going to take a break and clean up our station, but we'll catch you in a very short while. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are just catching up, we've been working on a very, very beautiful beef. We've also been infusing that with a beautiful other array of flavors. And now we've just come to the last and final stage, which is a plating. And now for this, I will begin by plating my broccoli and setting the base on the plate. So just proceed to go round in a circle. Of course, always beginning from the outside and finishing off on the center. Just proceed to remove all your florets. And of course, always looking for a wide base, one that will accommodate all of your other ingredients as you continue to build some height on your plate. And next, proceed to plate your beef right over the broccoli. Of course, always plating first right in the center of the plate and working your way around the sides. And once that is done, very simply proceed to add your cherry tomatoes, always beginning by the four corners of your plate. And proceed to add the rest around the sides. Of course, always making sure to get a nice even spread out of your ingredients. Remember, this is basically where the showcase of your plate is in the plating. Once done, very simply finish off by grinding some black peppercorns over your dish. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is my very simple take on broccoli with some beef and some chili. I hope you've managed to grasp something new, and I hope you will actually try it out on yourselves and write back to us and tell us how your recipe went. And remember, just for the serving suggestions, this can actually be served on the side with some rice or any particular starch of choice. It can also be had on its own as it is. Remember, that is basically the foundation of a dish. You should actually have a bit of vegetables in there, a bit of protein. And of course, for those of you who are feeling a bit more challenged and a bit more wary, you can of course alternatively also serve that with a bit of a starch. So we're going to call it a day now, and I'm going to dig into this beautiful dish, but I will bid you farewell, thanking you for tuning into the show this far. And until the next episode, I will wish you a very, very lovely evening and God's blessings. See you soon.